When it comes to the West Coast Main Line in the UK, it's likely that there's a certain train that comes to mind, the iconic Pendolino. In this video, I will explain its roots, its creation, its operation, and its future. The Pendolino, assigned in the system TOPS as the Class 390, is not the first of its kind. Its roots span back to the Class 370 known as the Intercity Advanced Passenger Train, or the APT. The failed tilting train from the 1980s, while revolutionary, a rushed introduction, slow development, intense tilt, and having to share track with slower trains led to problems and its withdrawal in 1986. Around this same time, in 1982, in Italy, Fiat Ferrovia purchased APT patents that were used to improve their technology for the ETR 450 train sets, which were tilting trains. In 1999, 17 years later after this sale, and 13 years after the APT's withdrawal, the newly formed Virgin Trains West Coast, owned by Richard Branson, ordered the Class 390s to replace their ageing rolling stock comprising of the Mark III and Mark II coaches and the locomotives such as the Class 86, 87 and 90. Alstom were selected to construct the Class 390s, utilising the same tilting technology from Fiat Ferrovia. 1 year later, in 2000, Alstom acquired Fiat Ferrovia and rebranded the division into Alstom Ferrovia 2 years later. Unlike most trains, the Class 390 was built with two pantographs. While this later became the standard for intercity trains in the UK, this was a new thing at the time. This allows for more time to drop the pantograph if an obstruction is sighted, and also allows the unit to continue if one pantograph is damaged. The original order for the Class 390s were 53 sets comprised of 9 coaches, although they were initially delivered with 8 coaches, with 5 carriages being standard class and 4 being first class. The Class 390s were constructed at Alstom's Washwood Heath plant in Birmingham, England, from 2001 to 2004. They were all designated the Class 390-0. Washwood Heath closed a year later in 2005. They were built to have a top speed of 140 miles per hour. Each carriage was to have a toilet, except for Coach C, which would have an onboard shop installed. Table seats were fitted with plug sockets, all seats had built-in headphone jacks and pre-installed radio stations for passengers to use. A digital seat reservation system was also installed. Accessible spaces and toilets were also to be provided on board. Standard class was laid out in a 2+2 configuration and first class was to be laid out in a 1+2 configuration. Alongside the onboard shop, a physical kitchen was to be installed in Coach K, the first class driving coach, where fresh hot meals would be prepared and served for the first class passengers. The Class 390 can tilt up to 8 degrees, which allows them to navigate curves of the track 20% greater than other trains. Trains fitted with these sorts of tilt systems, only being the Class 390 and Class 221 in the UK, abide to enhanced permissible speed limits, shown as a normal speed sign but in a yellow background instead of white, with the text EPS above the speed limit, typically under the standard speed signs. Only tilting trains can follow the EPS speed limits. The physical construction of the Class 390s meant that their structural integrity is much higher than most rolling stock. Having smaller window sizes, an aluminium body and crush zones that could absorb 3 times more the force than previous rolling stock meant that the 390s are very strong trains and meant that they have a very good crashworthiness standard. Unlike most tilting trains, the Class 390's tilting mechanism uses an actively actuated tilt system, whereas most trains have the tilt locations pre-programmed. The Class 390s actively detect the upcoming corners using sensors and tilts as a result. The Tilt Authorization and Speed Supervision System, referred to as TAS, was also integrated with this. In the event of the tilt system failing, the train would automatically return to the non-tilting position and apply the emergency brakes automatically. The Class 390 was fitted with the standard UK rail systems such as the Automatic Warning System, AWS, and the Train Protection and Warning System, TPWS. What stands out with them is the inclusion of the Tilt Authorization and Speed Supervision System as mentioned a moment ago. TAS controls the Class 390's tilting system through track-fitted beacons within 5 miles of each other. These relay information to the train such as speed limits, with the most important feature being the fact that the task system could lock the tilting system at certain locations, such as areas with bridges and tunnels. The system is disabled and re-enabled by the beacons at the designated locations. The introduction of the Class 390 was repeatedly delayed due to inadequate project management and the collapse of Railtrack, the controversial predecessor of Network Rail. The Class 390 entered passenger service with Virgin Trains on the 23rd of July 2002, running a daily return service between Birmingham and Manchester for the 2002 Commonwealth Games in Manchester.
Attention please, is there a doctor on board?
6 months later, the first Class 390 carried passengers out of London Euston for the first time. The full fleet was almost fully rolled out by January 2005, with only 8 locomotive sets remaining for peak time services out of Birmingham. Virgin Trains applied their classic grey and red livery to all of their Pendolinos, alongside assigning each train with their own unique nameplate, with many incorporating the Virgin brand, such as Virgin Star, Virgin Hero, Virgin Prince and Virgin Spirit, to name a few. Alongside this, many Class 390s were also named after cities or towns, such as the city of Manchester and the city of Glasgow. The Class 390s initially received backlash due to their reliability problems and their awful capacity, with the early 8-coach units having a 50-50 split of first class and standard class carriages, which is a ridiculous prospect. The introduction of the additional coach changed this to 55-44, which slightly improved things. By 2007, all of the 9-car Class 390s were running and in service. Their reliability had increased, and they were revolutionary for the West Coast Main Line, being a drastic improvement to the old rolling stock they had replaced. Their comfort, speed, acceleration and efficiency was much better than the ageing rolling stock they had replaced, and for the first time since the APT, the UK saw tilting trains once more. Unfortunately, a rainy evening on the 23rd of February 2007 would shake the railway to its core. On that day, Unit 390033, named the City of Glasgow, was running a service from London Euston to Glasgow Central when it hit a faulty set of points at Grey Rig between Oxenholme and Penrith Station in the Lake District, and derailed at 95 miles per hour. On board, passengers described the feeling of rocking and violent swaying before it derailed. The first coach jackknifed with the rest and the train rolled down an embankment, ripping down the overhead electric equipment with it. The driver, Ian Black, was slammed into the control desk during the incident and broke his neck. A large, extensive rescue operation took place, and unfortunately, there was one fatality, an elderly passenger. Despite the awful nature of the incident, which was found to be the fault of Network Rail for their failure to inspect the points, Richard Branson expressed his respect for the Class 390, comparing it to a tank due to its strong structural integrity, as mentioned before, claiming that the accident would have been a lot more devastating if it involved the old rolling stock, which had poorer crashworthiness standards. 390033 was written off and scrapped due to the cost of the repair being higher than ordering a new set. The driving and shop coaches of 390033 still remain as a static installation for the Avanti West Coast Training Academy and crew. 390033 is the only of the class that has been withdrawn and scrapped as of making this video. For a time, the greatly named Pendolino was introduced to fill in the place of 390033, bringing back the sight of loco-hauled rolling stock to Virgin Trains. It was a set of 9 Mark III coaches hauled by a Class 90 and DVT, wearing the Class 390 livery, sharing similar properties inside. After the grey rig derailment, operation of the Class 390 continued as normal. It should be noted that the integrated onboard system was permanently disabled during March 2010 when the system was replaced with onboard Wi-Fi on the trains. Following the increase in capacity on the West Coast Main Line, Virgin trains were made by the DfT to extend the Class 390 fleet. 31 of the now 52 Class 390s were to be lengthened to 11 coaches alongside the ordering of 4 brand new 11 coach Class 390s. The new coaches and new units were built in Savigliano in Italy and imported via the Channel Tunnel. Alstom fulfilled this and delivered the first of the new units by July 2011. Alongside the delivery of the new coaches, the lengthening of the Class 390s was completed by December 2012. The new 11-car Class 390s were assigned the subclass 390-1. This included the pre-existing 9 cars that had been extended to 11 cars. For example, 390-019 became 390-119. The Class 390 is identified in this way. The 390 number itself is the actual TOPS classification of the train. The 0 or the 1 indicates if it is a 9 or 11 formation, and the last 2 numbers refer to which number it was assigned when it was built. So the first 390 to be built is a 9 car and therefore it is 390-001. The 43rd Class 390 to be built is a 9 car and therefore 390-043. The 57th Class 390 to be built is an 11 car and therefore it is 390-157. The introduction of the 11 car sets alongside the 4 new units boosted capacity dramatically and reduced overcrowding on the sets. It also allowed the Pendolino to be retired. From 2012 to 2019, operations were almost completely uneventful. One thing to note is the project to repaint the Class 390s out of their original livery and into the brand new flowing silk livery from 2017. However, the fleet would never fully get this repaint. In August 2019, it was announced that Virgin Trains had lost the Intercity West Coast franchise, and First Trenitalia, a collaboration between First Group and the Italian transport company Trenitalia, would take over operations on the 8th of December 2019. All of the Class 390s were stripped of any and all Virgin Trains branding, wearing a plain white livery across the fleet up until the introduction of First Trenitalia, branding as Avanti West Coast. On the 8th of December 2019, Avanti West Coast took over operations and inherited all Class 390s. Over the next 2 years, all of the Class 390s were applied into the Avanti West Coast livery. At this point, the Class 390s were rapidly approaching 20 years old. Following the introduction of Avanti West Coast, they made a pledge to refurbish the entire Pendolino fleet extensively. This entailed the removal of a first-class coach from the 11-car trains, new seats, a shop, plug sockets at all seats, new lighting, refurbished vestibule areas, new seat reservation systems, improved passenger information systems, and essential train system improvements. This refurbishment, worked by Alstom, began in 2021 with the 11 coach trains being done first, followed by the 9 coach trains after, due to the lack of need for the conversion of the coach as all the 9 cars had a first class removed. This was completed in June 2024. The refurbishment, referred to as a midlife refurbishment, brought the Class 390s up to modern day standards and ensured the trains were kept up to a good standard of service. Presently, the Class 390 is a 56 strong newly refurbished fleet. They are still quite reliable and now all wear the iconic Avanti West Coast livery, the most notable of the fleet being 390-121 and 390-119, wearing the Climate and Progress liveries respectively. While Avanti West Coast as a company is considered to be quite controversial, the Class 390s and their refurbishment are viewed in a very positive light overall, with future plans for 140 mph running, installation of European train control system, and up to date from the refurbishment. It's clear that these iconic workhorses won't be going anywhere soon.